All right, we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. Thank you all for joining us. It is October 2nd, and we are at our joint City Council Board of County Commissioners meeting. And I will go ahead and start with the roll call. We'll go around the room. My name is Melissa Youssef. I'm mayor for the city of Durango, and we'll go left.
Dave Woodruff, Durango City Council.
Olivier Bosmans, Durango City Councilor.
Mark Morgan, Durango City Attorney.
Adam Rogers, Director of Finance for La Plata County.
Clyde Church, La Plata County Commissioner.
Matt Salka, La Plata County Commissioner.
Chuck Stevens, County Manager.
Marcia Porter Norton, La Plata County Commissioner.
Bob Brammer, Acting City Manager.
Gil Diassi, Durango City Council.
Thank you. And then we've got Faye. You want? Okay. Faye Harmer is with us as well, our city clerk. And our city manager is at a conference this week. So thank you, Chief, for sitting in for him. We appreciate it. We have a pretty simple, but I don't know how simple it is, but we have one item on our agenda today, the joint sales tax budget. So who is going to take us through this?
That would be Adam Rogers for La Plata County Director of Finance. There we go. So today I'm here to present the budget for the joint sales tax. As a review, there's a couple new council people on the city of Durango, so I just want to review it for them primarily. The rest of you have seen this before. But the voters approved back in 1975 a 1% sales tax countywide, and that was split between the three municipalities, Bayfield, Ignacio, and Durango, as well as La Plata County. And then in 1982, the voters again approved another percent, or the second penny, if you will. And during that, it established a joint sales tax between City of Durango and La Plata County. So that's why we're here today. And as you can see on the pie chart, out of the 2% sales tax that's countywide, 63.45 of that goes to the county. Bayfield gets 4, Ignacio gets 3.55, Durango gets 18, and then joint sales tax gets 11%. So here's the budget that I'm proposing today, or that I'm bringing forth to the group. Before we really get into it, I want to explain a couple of the numbers up on top as far as the sales tax goes. I'm projecting this year revenues to be just a hair over $3.9 million. And then I'm proposing next year revenues to be about 3.7, just a little bit over 3.7. Actual to budget is down about 2% for this year. So we are seeing a slowdown countywide. I realize my numbers are a little bit different than what the city gets. Devon's numbers they're just a little bit different, and it's the makeup of the rest of the county versus just what's in town for the city of Durango. So for next year, we're about 2% decrease over actual to this year, and then next year it's about a 4% decrease from actual to what I'm budgeting. We're expecting a recession that start to take place sometime in 24. We're already seeing a slowdown of sales tax from what we've budgeted for. So that's the revenue piece. The breakout is still the same for the people that are new. The library gets 82.2% of the budget as far as sales tax goes, and then Durango Senior Services gets 17.3%. And then before we make that breakout, we deduct $10,000 for the Durango landfill to take care of any needs that it has. And then this year, every other year, we do a hazardous waste roundup. This year, we took out 85,000 for the roundup. The person that handles a lot of that, she suggested that we would bump it up. I mean, we're seeing inflation everywhere. Why not in the cleanup? And sure enough, the bill came back and it's potentially higher. So that's how we get through most of this budget. I wanted to point out that the senior center asked for an additional funding. This year they lost, let me get to the right page here. Their grant that they get from San Juan Basin Area Agency on Aging, normally they get around $900,000. It was shortened this year to it was shortened by $343,000. She asked to have that put in. So I put it in. It's a grant that goes for the older population, if you will, in the Durango, the seniors in Durango and just outlying area, not all the way to like Bayfield. So she asked to put that in as an additional funding for a shortfall that she's experiencing. And then she also asked for $150,000 for a bathroom remodel. As we all know nowadays, anytime you touch the bathroom, you have to have a gender neutral bathroom as well. So that's part of that also. I did not get any requests from the city on anything. So I put in what I had. So that's why you're seeing that. And then the homeless expenditures, Manna's asking for another $200,000 this year. So I put that in there as well. And then as you see on the bottom line there, what you have left over is $115,000. We've had some discussion. I know everybody has seen an email on transfers out to city and county. Clarification on that. That's the mechanism we use to, one, transfer it out to the city and county. As you can see above, I do a transfer out to the landfill. That's the mechanism I do that for. There's a transfer out to senior services. That's the mechanism I do. For like the city, when they bill me for the library, they send me a bill. I cut an AP check for that. So it acts as a catch-all. You could use the word, it also includes a contingency, but the difference that the city does versus us, we need to budget everything in our budget, where the city can have a mid-year adjustment to it. We don't have that same luxury. So that's the purpose of that being there. One thing I missed is the beginning fund balance is just a hair over $1 million. It's $1,037,000. So that's it at the end of the day. And then the ending fund balance is per the agreement is $250,000. Questions? Yes, ma'am. The Durango Library gets 82.2.
Also, just a clarification piece. Whoa. What was the grant that was lost for the senior center? About the 343,000
It
shortfall?
was called San Juan Basin Area Agency on Aging Gap.
Let me clarify that. Chris, I think you're muted. Not used to that. The Area Agency on Aging brings in federal and state dollars, through the state to senior centers around the state. And in our case, we have a regional area on aging, which covers the 5 county areas. And they had excess COVID funds for the last 2 years. those funds have now been exhausted and we're back pretty much to normal where we were before COVID hit. So it's not that they did anything wrong. It's just that the declaration COVID emergency has been lifted and the dollars have been expended.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying.
We also have the director, Nurse Reporter Norton. We also have the director of the senior. If anybody has any more specifics.
I want to follow up Olivier Bosman too. And I have several points here. Let's go on to the senior center. So before 2 years ago, they had less funds? And what made the change and what made it so temporary, and why do we need the funds onwards without having thought this through 2 years ago for the funding? And just to give a little background, and because to me, it's like a doubling of cost for the senior center compared to 2 years ago.
Yeah, what happened is the state had excess COVID dollars, federal COVID dollars that were passed through to the agencies, and which were then passed down to the senior centers in the different counties. And that was proportional to population. I sit on the finance committee for the AAA, and it was looked at by all as a fair way of doing it. And now those funds have been expended, and we're at the end of the cycle. And all of a sudden, there's a shortfall in total operation. During COVID, there was a lot of Meals on Wheels that were delivered to a lot of people out in the rural areas. And now there's slow shift back into congregate dining, and it's a different dollar figure, a different type of operation.
And how are those senior services typically funded? Is that through the county, or has it always been the joint sales tax, or is it, how does that typically split up? Like healthcare, mental health care runs through the county, I think. So how does the senior services typically get funded?
Senior centers here in La Plata County, we're funded by both the county and joint sales tax. And I think that's all. I don't.
Bunch of grants. I thought we had a bunch of grants.
She has a bunch of grants, so two pieces to it. There's the senior services that are part of the JST, which is to deal with those seniors that are within city limits, probably some of them coming up from Junction Creek or something as well, but it's mainly just the Durango area. And then there's a whole separate side to it where there's senior center that's in the eastern part of the county, as well as probably in the western as well. That's a separate, I don't want to say it's a separate budget, but we try to separate and differentiate between the two.
Have those users doubled in the last 2 years? I think what Olivier is saying is in 2022, we spent 519,000. And then this year we're looking at 974,000 out of the joint sales tax for senior services.
More.
And so,
It's plus 150, so it's.
oh, and another 150, sorry, a little, so it's about double.
Yeah, that's right.
Good afternoon. My name is Vicki Mestis. I'm the director of the Durango La Plata Senior Center. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to address that question. And that is exactly what has happened. We have not seen a decrease in the number of seniors and public that in a way we were not anticipating. I mean, the decrease in the revenue from dropping from 600,000 to, give or take to 389,000. There was no way to anticipate the shortfall. And to address that, yes, we're seeing an increase in every service program. So this includes transportation services, home tour services to allow our seniors to live independently on their own, caregiver services. We knew when we got all that extra money, as Commissioner Church indicated, for COVID, it was going to hit the line, and we're there. Unfortunately, we were fortunate back then. It was great. We were able to utilize those and the funds, and now we knew the shortfall was going to be now. and we're not seeing those carryover funds. Region 9 services a large volume, Montezuma County, La Plata County, Dolores. And of course, we are the largest within that Region 9 area. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, since you had the increase in services in COVID, did you add new programming or did you just increase the current level of services?
Very good. It just increased the level of service. We added no additional services. This is just, we knew, to be honest with you, but in 2020, in 2030, our aging population is going to triple. And we are starting to now see a reflection in that. And so when we look at those numbers, this is the onset of that. Our aging population is tripling.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing. We want to be able to continue to provide those services. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to clarify, the county doesn't, we provide mental health through some contracted services with our Department of Human Services, but we are not a mental health provider. So Counselor Bosman, you said mental health, it's provided through primarily children and families and DHS, but we're not, that's what Access does and others do in our.
Yeah, no, I understand. Can I make another question? So on the, I have a question for you. You have a 2024 estimated sales revenue that is 6% less than what you proposed in 2023. Yeah, that's quite a drop. And then for the city, our actual sales tax, we don't track, at least we as council don't see the month-to-month numbers, only the actual numbers. We don't have a comparison between how we are doing compared to our forecast. And I asked it, but I got an informal response from the city manager that is 3% above the forecast. And OpenGov also does not provide that kind of data. So I know that the city, based on their forecast, is doing 3% better in the sales tax revenue currently than we anticipated. Why is the county seeing not only a decrease, but I mean, if I look back for years, only 2020, I think, was a decrease in sales tax, and every other year is an increase. So that, to me, that's a bit, just explain a little bit why you're so concerned.
I kind of hinted to that at the beginning, is that the city sales tax, while it makes up a good portion of it mirrors the county in some ways, it differentiates because of the outlying areas where I'm pulling from also. So right now, and it's a little bit of the forecast. Devin may have forecasted differently than I did for this year and next year. So right now I'm actually running about, like I said, about 2% below my budget or what we forecasted originally. And for next year, we ran several models, not only in-house, but we had some people on our long-term finance committee run some models, and we came up with a variety of different outcomes. And we chose kind of a middle down the road. If it gets better, great. We can deal with that. If it gets worse, that's really gonna be bad for us. But we're given what we think is going to be a realistic view.
And on that same topic, maybe to give me a better understanding, how much of the sales tax you have estimated comes from the city sales tax? What percent is it like?
We don't get our data that way. We get our data broken out by, different functions, if you will, like retail, hotel.
That's okay. Let's ask
So
the question.
we don't
differently.
get it broken out by in town and out of town.
So I'll ask Devin a question, because you have it, we can use estimated or 2023 or 2020. I have the numbers here.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Commissioners. Devin Schmidt, CFO. So just to describe a little bit, the differences between, maybe our forecasts and what the county is forecasting. One is we have different exemptions. So the city is home rule, where the state or the county is statutory. And in that, the city is able to tax different things like domestic food consumption, gas, electric, and different things that the county is not. So we are also looking at some of that recessionary data. However, our expectations is that we expect consumer spending to shift. So while folks may not be going out to restaurants or things of that nature, they're still going to need to eat, right? So that's probably the bigger difference. Year to date through August, we are showing a 4% increase over the prior year. So we're not seeing the effects yet. In our 2024 proposed budget, we're showing 2% over 2022 actuals. And so I think, we are looking at it more conservatively as well. I think it's just a difference in those exemptions and what we're looking at for our forecasting models. Does that help?
Yeah, because if I understand what you said correctly, it means that you are going to, the forecast that we will see during the budget retreat will show a 6% increase, 4% because it's 4% actual higher, and then 2% increase on that.
So it'll actually just be a 2% over 2022 actuals.
Okay.
Yes.
But the actuals are 4% higher than the estimated at the beginning of the year.
Right now through 2023 through August, we are 4% higher than we were at the same time last year.
So I'm just wondering, and I'll lead to something else here. So we are going up compared to the forecast of 2023, 6% for the forecast of 2024, which is 2% over actuals. And you are going 6% less than the forecast of 2023. And so that's a 12% difference. And it's very interesting because the allocations you have, first of all, I'm not sure to what degree you communicate, but I think maybe that would be, anyway, the consequence is that if you use the same percentage allocations and then we end up at the library, last year we didn't fund the library, we left 250, we did fund the library through the city. I have to reword that very carefully. So we had an estimated percentage that resulted in 3.22 million for the library. The city requested only 3 million. So we left that money on the table. And now, because the sales tax estimated revenue is significantly less, all of a sudden we have a lot less money if we use the same typical percentages. And I think that we've missed an opportunity this whole year to provide extended services to our community for the library, Sunday, late opening hours. And I certainly hope it's not associated with a discussion of a library district, but I see the numbers here and I think, I hope we're doing the best for our community that we can. So that was one consequence of having a very conservative estimate at the county compared to a more positive outlook from the city. Having said that, there's also a number difference that I don't understand, which is for your 2023 estimated on the library, you have written down 3.226. And it was my understanding that it was 3.002 that the city requested.
Adam, can you go over the adopted budget? Because it's not 3 million. The adopted budget was 3,279,619. So regardless of what you asked, what we adopted as part of the joint use sales tax is 3,279,000. So do I have that correct, Adam? Okay. So I don't know where you're coming from on the 3 million that you asked for 3 million and only got when the adopted budget is.
So Devin, maybe you can explain that because I remember distinctly 3.002 million was requested by the library from the city for the funding of the library.
Oh, through your budget. Right. So that's not, it's
Yeah.
different
But where is the difference? Because if the library is funded. through
because
the
this,
joint
your budget doesn't show up in this budget.
No, I understand, but why does your number show 3.27? And then we only asked 3.002. What happened to the difference?
I think Adam's going to have to explain that because I think we're not on the same wavelength in terms of what the question is. This is the adopted budget that we sat here last year and adopted.
I understand what we're looking at, but the city asked 3.002. And when you say projected or estimated, which is what you anticipate will be the final result for the year, you show 3.226. So if the city only asked 3.002, what happened to the 220,000?
I can't really answer your question because I don't know where you're coming up with the 3 million, roughly 3 million.
Let me try to help here.
Okay.
So the city's budgeting process aside, so the 3.279 is the straight 82.2% of the anticipated sales tax revenue. Okay, that's where we get that number. Do we pay the library invoices quarterly?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so.
So if at the end of Q4, when we true up for any given year, if we don't receive invoices from the city and there's money left, that would just stay in the joint sales tax fund balance, correct?
Yes.
Just like any other account. So if the city only spends 3.002, a number that I've never heard before this moment, but if the city only spends and invoices the county that amount, then whatever the remainder is will just stay in the joint sales tax. It doesn't go anywhere. It just goes into the fund balance.
Just to clarify, I remember this same meeting last year, and that was a number that was brought up, and it's part of many discussions that I've been involved in.
Sounds like Devin might be able to give some clarity for us.
Yeah, sure. So looking at the city of Durango adopted budget, Counselor Bosman's is correct that it was $3,094 as adopted. And so I'm trying to think back in my archives, but I believe that was where Luke, our library director, thought he could do his services at that threshold. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Luke, but that is our city of Durango adopted budget is $3,094 last year.
Luke Alvey Henderson, library director. You know, I could not say without like seeing a recording of the meeting, whether we talked about that number beyond just, you know, possibilities at the county joint session, if any decision was decided. I have a memory of talking about it and what possibilities that have done, but I can't remember if that happened at one of these meetings, if that happened at reconciliation. Not to disagree with your account,
No.
because I just don't remember for sure. And I couldn't, without being able to go back to that, but yes, we did look at the possibility of the 3.2 and past 3 million, we'd be looking at new staff. And based on discussions, you know, that Adam had previously, I'd had with Devin previously, we thought 2024 could be a tough year. And we did not want to add new staff members to add more hours if we were then going to have to take that away in 2024, or more realistically, do it with less staff and have overall services suffer. So we did go to city council with a smaller ask than what was in the joint sales tax budget allocated to us. But where that and when that was communicated to county, I don't have a specific answer to that.
I can refresh everybody's memory. It was the same group of people, except for you two. And the request was specifically mentioned, and the argument you made was the risk for hiring people, similar as what you said, because of inflation pressure, the war, the price of oil, and a variety of things. And I think it's unfortunate because not only did we not use that money to extend our services, our actual sales tax revenues are higher than anticipated. So we could have had it the whole year. But I guess I made my point. So it goes back to when we currently estimate the county, the sales tax very, very conservatively. And the city has an opposite view pretty much because we're increasing it. Then maybe we're doing the same thing where we have a whole year and we're going to end up with a positive result because we might have more sales tax and we have lost another year of extending services for the library and providing those services to our community. So I hope that will have some follow-ups to the finance people.
Counselor Bosman, I just would simply say, you know, thank you for pointing that out. We finally got clear on what you were talking about with 3 million was your budget. And I think just from a process perspective going forward in the future, this would have been really good to know. Because we might have been able, before we passed our budget, if your budget was less than what we allocated, because you were hedging on what 24 was going to look like in 23, we could have used that money for something else. because we have to take it down to 250,000 by the resolution. That's what the fund balance has to be, but that looks, you said it was 3 million something. I'm terrible at doing math on the spot, but that's like $279,000 that we could have either said, okay, we're going to increase the fund balance, or could the library spend that temporarily? I just think, hindsight is always 2020. Being a Monday morning quarterback at, Monday morning, afternoon quarterback is never helpful, but I think this is a process thing we really need to take a look at. So,
Well, and scheduling, like we're doing this now. We don't even start talking about our
Yeah.
budget until,
Yeah.
a week from now. We don't approve it until November, December. And so by the time we get there, we've already decided this. And so how do we pay the library? How does the joint sales tax pay, how do we do draws? Is this what you've drawn out already?
No, that's what I anticipate. Revenue. So here. This becomes the problem as revenues decrease. If I apply the same 82, whatever the other percentage for us is, there's a decrease that's occurring. How do I make up the decrease? So I'm ratcheting back the same percentage all the way through for everybody. As when the numbers increase, that's a different story. But when right now the county's seeing decrease in numbers, and Devin clearly demonstrated as the difference. I'm only showing a 1%, 1.5%, 2% increase. She's seeing 4%. So the money is based on the county sales tax, not the city sales tax. So when that decrease comes in, I start ratcheting back. And so my current projection is what you're seeing today of where do we go? 3,226,000 for the public library. Now I'll get a couple more shots at it between now and when we do a final budget or an adopted budget in December to true it up even more before, to give everybody a better idea. But
I'm not here to debate your
Yeah.
your budget has, and I'm not a financial outlook, expert. That's not what my expertise is in. I just want to know what systems we can put in place so Luke can spend the money we've budgeted effectively and not overspend, but not underspend either, like we did. And with our two budgets kind of a little bit different in how we approve them, what is the best process going forward that we can potentially change in order to make it more streamlined and better? And I think that the two of you are probably the best people to tell us how to do that
Madam Mayor,
correctly.
I just want to make a point on that, and that would be, I would love to have the opportunity for Luke to have all that, to know what he's receiving in a library district would just be perfect. So then you can add more staff, you can add more services, and then we can work on road projects, sidewalk projects. And that's just another point I just wanted to make. Thank you.
Well, because if we don't meet his budget, then the city's has been covering it. And then if we don't meet the senior center budget, who's been covering that, you guys have, right? And so
Yeah.
it's, it's kind of, yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, the district
I
kind of
enjoy our
sells.
partnerships.
I do
It's just, but
too.
it's a pain I will back Adam Rogers every day because I do like the conservative approach, but with your CFO, sorry, I forgot, but it's one where it's different. We can't really judge it all that well, but I will definitely back what he has to say. And he's been right for the 3 years I've been here.
we're also looking at recessionary trends. Do you want to talk about that? That's another thing that, hopefully doesn't happen. Again, good news if it doesn't, but do you want to talk a bit about that, Adam? That's also coming in from our long-term finance committee, his expertise as to where some of these numbers are coming from.
okay. So to answer one of your questions, we have had emails back and forth on what I'm projecting this year. So we've kind of done some of the work. I know you were shocked when the first set came out, but yeah, like I said earlier, my financial analyst runs some data analysis. He gathers data from around the state to apply. And then one of the people on our long-term finance committee, he's very good at running revenue projections for us and stuff. So the three of us kind of get together and talk about different scenarios that come up, and this is kind of the middle of the road that we think we will hit, based on what we see.
And I would just add that, I think that what staff did in 2023, intentionally not bringing more staff on under the assumption that it may be trying times in the future. And we didn't want to be in a situation where we would have to then lay people off that we hired. I did appreciate that approach, that more conservative approach. And the other thing that comes to my mind is if you budget conservatively and you have extra money, then, it just stays in our fund balances and we can decide what to do with those funds later. And so it's not that they won't be used effectively the minute we find out that they are secure funds to be used. So I just want to point that out. I do appreciate the conservative approach as well. I think that that's part of our job as elected officials in municipal and county government. So just a thought. Yes, Clyde?
Yes, I just think one of the things here is to give everybody quarterly estimates. I think as we ratchet up or ratchet down, quarterly estimates on what we think the end of the year is going to be. Is that possible?
Yes, that's always possible.
And just as a point of, clarification, whenever we make these kind of decisions, it's not the library making them, that we're a city department. When it comes to something as big as this was, the majority of council's approval of our proposed budget. And we, just so we can clarify, we do not anticipating spending over what we budgeted for 2023 with the city. So those funds still exist for, 1 quarter. So that's not much time to take a look as a county to see, is there something that's an immediate project that could be done? But if there is time to do it, those funds will be there, because I don't know how the miscommunication happened, but I just want to make it very clear. We are not going to go back and try to spend those funds. We are going to stay within our 2023 adopted budget from the city of Durango.
Can I ask a question, Luke? Well, actually, it's an open question. Since the city has for the library budget for this year, let's say 3 million, and the county has 3.226 estimated. It basically means for this year, we still have 226,000 left. That would end up getting passed through, maybe. So my question to you is, what is the budget request that you have made from the city, or what is your preliminary number for the budget for the library?
So it's, Devin, what you have that number in front of you?
And I'll tie it to the question is, are we extending services? Because we have the money.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no problem. So what Luke has in the library budget that isn't considering grant funding is 3,117,571. That's obviously over the joint sales tax number that the county has provided. However, we also receive about $40,000 in facility rentals, fees, things of that nature. And then Luke and my team have been working really closely together to try and see how we can get to that 2.9 million. So that'll be a conversation at the city council retreat on the budget.
So how do we as a council and county commissioners provide direction if there is support for adding services to our community?
Absolutely. If we had a majority decision to add services, then, we would write up a report of what we thought would be the realistic option for that for additional costs. What would be a realistic option if we did it with existing staff, both the cons and pros of that? And then we would execute, because we are a city department. And regardless of what my professional judgment says, this is every single cent I get paid in is taxpayer money. And I'm going to go with whatever city council as majority body states, and I will find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. So this is just me as one counselor, but I would like at least to see, if it's possible, what the cost would be, because we're in the middle of this budget process. And that's one question. the next one is, I would really like to have a better understanding why the city budget forecast for 2024 is 6% higher, and then the county is 6% lower. And I would like to have a better understanding of why the history of the senior services. And I totally support it, and don't get me wrong on that. It's more about where does it historically come from and why, where are we going now? Because if it's a 2-year temporary funding based on COVID, you would assume the services would somehow change, and you would still have the increase of cost and inflation and all those things. But there is some sort of balance, and the doubling of cost is not nothing. That's my 3 points on the budget.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I just, those are good questions. I think today we're supposed to be giving direction on the JSUT. So I think we need to stay at the, anything that we can follow up on that we feel like we can take on as assignment about the senior services that we will certainly get back to you. But I think today we have to just say, we're looking in concept here. These are good questions being raised, but I think we're looking in concept. You've seen the numbers, and do we generally agree with them? So we would be funding the deficit in that has come forth for senior programs based on coming off of COVID money, but also seeing increase in services. The library is slightly down, but based on what the information that we have today, it looks like it's about what you budgeted for. It's a little under what you budgeted for 2023. So that's an important number. And then I think the process question on the table is, how do we circle back? Because again, I'm back to this 279 figure. And no blame here, all right? This is not trying to look in the rearview mirror and make people feel bad, but what else could we have funded this year? Whether it was more homeless camp cleanup, let's just be clear. Whether it was more services, let's say La Posta was going and going and going, and we were ready to start spending money. And when we found out there was a $279,000 overage to get sewer down there or get our roads fixed, we could always look at these joint priorities. Durango Mesa Park. I mean, things that come up. So from a process perspective, I think you're right, Council Buell, that, we start maybe a little sooner. And so just how can we circle back and say, if we're leaving money on the table, let's not do that. And let's figure out what the joint projects are. But I think today I'm just maybe calling the question a bit about, bearing in mind the questions that have been raised here. Do we have a general agreement on the budget as it's presented?
It's been an interesting history because remember, Marcia, can you remind me? I think we had extra money. Was it last year or the year before? And we literally divided it. Chuck, you probably remember. We divided it by the city and the county. Was it 300 each that we doled out to each other?
We didn't disperse money. That was a potential option that you had. You're talking about the fund balance and.
Yeah,
Ultimately, we funded the replacement of the HVAC. The 2 elected bodies came together
and then we
decided
spent
upon
that.
a joint project and spent that money to replace the HVAC. And that was mid-cycle, if
Right.
you remember. And so had we not had that transfers in and out line item, that would not have been an option
Right.
for the 2 elected bodies to use those funds. So.
But it's interesting because we had a similar situation where we had money on the table and we got to get together and decide how to use it. And we did. Thank you for reminding me. And so, I think that's how we will reconcile this process going forward due to timing issues like Mayor Pro Tem Buell suggested.
And Mayor, if I can, remember historically, the library has historically overspent the joint sales tax. I remember some very tense meetings in this room where the city was asking the county to continue to fund operating costs for the library out of joint sales tax. And frankly, the county wasn't want to do that at that time. So this has never come up before where the library has underspent what's been in the budget. It's usually the other way around. The library has overspent what's in the joint sales tax budget, and then the city has had to use general fund dollars to make up that difference.
I appreciate that. And again, I think staff was conscientiously making a decision to stay where they were at the time, given the uncertainty of the future. It makes sense. And so we're in a better position today. I mean, it's not a bad position to be in. So we can reevaluate as we continue to go on. We don't have to only do, like Chuck was saying, we look at this, I think, did you say mid-year? So we look at least at mid-year, which gives us some flexibility.
Yeah, I think it was in the May timeframe, because I remember there was a time crunch. We wanted to get the HVAC in the library installed before summer. I don't know that happened. I think it got done, but I think it got done probably midsummer. But there was concern and an urgency to try and move quickly on it. So I think we had that conversation probably in April or May.
Great.
of last year.
Yeah.
That's helpful. We'll have to remember to do that every year for sure. Other thoughts, Devin?
Can I just add one note as well? The library also did have a capital project for the security camera upgrade of $52,000. And so that believe that was another piece that was funded out of that position as well. I'm going to check and see if there is one more capital project in there, but we typically include those capital requests as part of the joint sales tax as well.
Great, good conversation. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Gilda.
Okay, but not on this, but on the senior center.
Yes?
Okay, so I'm curious, the estimated 2023 budget is more than the projected 2024 budget. Okay, do you think you'll be reducing services, or do you think you'll have less ability to provide services?
I think we're going to see more services because of aging population. That's a regional trend, not just Wada County.
Agreed. The goal is not to ever decrease services. It's actually to increase and look at our current services, and also how can we expand, right? Kind of circling back, Adam and I know Adam is being very conservative. I think if that's the overall consensus of this meeting. But you know, the goal is to not to defund services. There are some counties that do have to do that. And fortunately, we're in a position that we do have the joint sales tax funds, because that is never our goal. We want to be able to provide transportation, to provide meals on wheels, indoor dining, social aspects and interaction and activities. That truly is the ultimate goal.
Okay, so you don't think that the what is there? The smaller estimated 2024 budget will impact that?
I think to be clear, if I'm understanding the question, Counselor Yazzie, are you looking at the numbers
Yes.
630,000
Yes.
for 24? Okay, if you look at the line right below that 343, we've broken those out separately because we're making a distinct request of city council. If you were to add those two
Okay.
line items
Okay, I
together,
see that
it'd be
now.
900,000 and change.
Okay,
Um,
okay, good. That's what I was concerned about. Thank
74.
you.
Yeah.
We got this right.
And thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. You know, we do work very closely when it does come to funding. The senior centers funding revenues has always been complicated, and I've been doing this for 4 years now. There is the federal, there is the state funding. There's also small little grants and independent donations, and we're very fortunate to have that. But it all comes down to the joint sales tax. It funds a large portion of my funding. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, because the senior center services are critical for a lot of people. Thank you for your work.
Thank you for your support.
Seems like we're taking those other expenditures out of, looks like the homeless expenditures, the 333,000 less, and then also the transfer out. Is that kind of where we're making up some of those?
Yes, that's where we're making it up at. As a side note on the homeless expenditures, last year, a lot of it was to do the cleanup on Purple Cliffs area. And just so you kind of have an idea, I thought I had it here with me. Last year, the budget for coming out of the joint sales tax was $259,494 for the cleanup. And then the county also had picked up some of the additional tab for another $80,000 for the cleanup. So yes, to your point, that's where we're going to try to make it up at.
So that 530 was just other expenditures for that, but not solely just for cleanup, correct?
That was the cleanup part, yes.
Okay.
So the 530 number that was in there included the 259 that Adam referenced that was actually invoiced and paid for the cleanup of Purple Cliffs. Also included the money to operate the navigation center. And that was actually a bigger portion of it, because if you remember, Ann Morris came in before the two elected bodies and asked for additional funding. And so I don't know if you have the breakout exactly of what we funded to Manna last year, but
220.
So it looks like man is asking for 200,000. Is that where that 2024 budget is being budgeted towards that navigation center?
Yes.
Okay. Do we foresee how much more cleanup do we anticipate for the Purple Cliffs?
at Purple Cliffs, none, unless people start camping up there again. And I'd encourage all of you, if you haven't driven down La Posta Road recently, you should, because it was well worth. Those are big numbers. I mean, let's don't make no mistake about it. Those are big numbers to talk about a cleanup, but well worth it. I think the county was very pleased when we went out there to do the acceptance when the contractor finished. Feedback from the community that uses La Posta Road daily. We got a lot of very positive feedback. So the cleanup out there is very good. We don't anticipate additional cleanup unless we start to see the area occupied again, and we're doing our very best to make sure that that doesn't happen.
What was the grand total of that cleanup cost?
About 340,000 total.
Thank you for the clarification, Chuck. I'm glad to hear that. Man, great job on getting that mitigated and taken care of. So
Yeah.
so thank you.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I just have to talk about an elephant in the living room issue that I do want to put out there is people are still camping on our land, and it is behind the tech center again. And so we have had another line item in our budget for cleanup. And until we get on a more sustainable trajectory around the unhoused in our community, we are going to have these cleanup costs. They're just not at Purple Cliffs. So they're once again behind the tech center. Now I understand the impact to those neighborhoods isn't nearly what it used to be. I have no idea why, but we have people on the west side of town all the time, correct? This is probably where you and your officers spend a good deal of your time based on me going to work and home every night. So I just want to like, sometimes I feel like because Purple Cliffs closed and for the most part, people aren't there anymore and we got it cleaned up, the problem is still very much here.
Maybe the solution would be a dedicated managed camp. So we don't have the problems in the west side of Durango or at X Rock, and the joint sales tax would be a venue to look into that for.
And I would just add that we're getting an update tomorrow on the Best Western conversion
Oh, good.
project.
Yep, good.
I think is a step in the right direction
Yeah.
for some of that permanent supportive housing.
Yeah, and we also, as we talked with the governor today, I think this has been in the paper, but we always said when we closed Purple Cliffs, we weren't walking away from the problem. And so we have leveraged due diligence money and community education money to a nonprofit called the Community Investment Alliance, or CIA. I think they need a new acronym, but that's just me. Anyway, they are looking at a hotel conversion that would be bridge housing for, I know Jen Lopez has talked to you all about it. We're super excited about it because between that and the Best Western, I think we can have a really good way to have wraparound services, particularly at the bridge housing. Because people always say, well, where are people gonna, have basic stuff so they can start to get back to work or work in our service industry or get the mental health that they need. And so we envision leveraging, we hope, money for that project, because I think between that and the Best Western, we will be way far along than we were, say, 2 years ago. As far as a managed camp, we have plowed that ground so many times. I don't know if it's productive to continue to plow it, Olivier. I'll be honest with you. You saw what happened with managed camp in the county. And unless the city wants to put it somewhere, I think we just need to be clear. I mean, thank you for raising the idea today to our governor, but I'd rather leverage state funds for something that is more transitional and bridge. But I'm speaking as one commissioner. Well, this is actually policy from our commission. And so I don't know, let's talk about stuff and be transparent, but let's also not just hash ground that we know isn't very productive.
And I do appreciate, first of all, I think the Best Western, I was not very supportive, but it still adds value to specific low income group. The same with the project that you are doing, very great. I think it's great. But we have a gap in the homeless population that we are not addressing, and that is the ones that are camping out and don't want to go into transitional housing. And that is what takes up a lot of the time, because for the police and for the sheriff and all those people. And I just, I see a problem and I don't see a solution. I see patchwork and spending money on consequences, not a structural solution. Maybe other people have ideas. The only thing I see is a managed camp for that specific group, not the ones that are in transitional housing and getting their way out, as well as prevention and all the other things. But that part is missing. It's missing. But what is your thoughts on that group?
Let's see. I believe that you're correct. I believe there is a gap of people that are continually going to be unhoused. I think as a community, we have to ask ourselves the question, once we get Best Western, and if the Community Investment Alliance can get the finished with due diligence on, I think we're going to have to see where we're at. I think there will always be people. When we closed Purple Cliffs, there were 40 people. They were offered housing and they would not take it. So I don't know that any community in our country has a good answer for that particular group. There is often mental health and substance abuse involved, which raises an issue we talked about earlier. I guess my perspective is, I mean, I thank you for saying what is true. We have people that may not go into these two programs. What we should do about it as joint governments and what we should fund is another question. I personally think that a model that Nina or the faith-based community might want to look at is a shelter that would allow people in, when the temperatures are at a certain level, they can go into an overnight shelter. That too, we get back into where to put it. And the city's policy, again, elephant in the living room conversation, is you don't want it by a school or a neighborhood or a business, which means the whole city. And so where a faith-based community would put a shelter is a question, an open question. So, you know, maybe we get this fun, you know, figure out today if we're going to go this direction, but have a more extensive conversation. Commissioners, I don't mean to talk over you or for you.
No, Madam Chair, I completely agree with that statement. I would like to, let's get these two projects done. They're great projects and we go from there. You're exactly right. There is that group, you know, you can take a horse, lead it to water and can't make it drink. And my focus is substance use and mental health, because that's also attributes to those decisions that when given housing opportunities and they still don't take it. But then again, we go back on, well, we can have all the mental health facilities and all the drug use facilities out here, still can't make them go to those services. So I look forward to our partnerships with your hotel conversion as well as ours. And then I definitely will need to assess that situation and go from there.
And just a comment also, please, Mayor. I think that an overall strategy is being implemented over the long period of time. As we go, we learn, we expand, and we develop new strategies, and they're piecemeal, but together they make a strategy. And I think 10, 15 years from now, we look behind ourselves, we're going to say, that was a pretty good route we took. And lots of pieces, complicated, long time to develop, but I'm encouraged.
I would just add too that I am excited about these two projects that we're doing. I think it's proactive and productive and a step in the right direction. And, you know, there was not unanimous support for that either. And so these are difficult projects. There was majority council support for that. So I am excited about it. But I do think also in your discussion about a managed camp is some of those residents also wouldn't stay in a managed camp. And so you face the same problem. And then I was going to see if Chief Brammer wanted to add anything, because, he's with these residents on a regular basis. And I think that, you can talk about our first attempt is to always say we have space and if they want it in our shelters, and then we talk about what is available. Can you just speak to that briefly?
Chief, just let me interrupt for 1 second. you guys are in a study session on budget and you're getting into a very deep discussion about unhoused issues. I'm concerned that would raise some complaints from the public about this type of discussion taking place when the only thing on our agenda is budget. Everything can be related to budget, but you're kind of going way, way, way off of budget stuff on policy issues about the unhoused.
This is what happens
Just a
when we have one item on the agenda in 2 hours. Okay. Well, then maybe let's just cut it off right there and just not stop the conversation and stay back to the budget unless the chief would like to respond.
It is a challenging issue, and I think everybody here has pretty much covered that. We do have shelter availability at the VOA. We check that every single night before we take an enforcement action. These people that we're dealing with right now are not choosing that option.
If I
Thank you
may
so much.
bring it back to the budget.
Yeah.
Maybe we could consider adding more funds to the homeless topic and have at least that availability to make decisions, investments, studies, if that's what we're going.
I guess I don't know where the money would come from the joint sales tax. You look at the proposed budget for 2024 and I mean, there are the transfer out that County Manager Stevens was talking about. That's, 300,000 less than what we had in 2023 for any sort of fund balance, forwards out. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. So
Because you guys have a specific budget. There's no budget amendments. You have to stay to a fixed budget for 2024 regardless, right?
yeah, we have a little flexibility with that transfers in and out line item. If it's an mutually agreed upon joint project that the elected bodies agree to, we can do something. So just if during this work session, the two elected bodies gave direction to staff today to increase the amount for the homeless expenditures line item by, I don't know, it's just a number. We would first look to that $115,000 in transfers in and out. Because that's money right now that's not allocated to anything.
Thank you.
Do you have a
for clarifying.
proposal, Counselor Bosman's, for taking, because it looks like if we are all agreeing to the other line items above it, it looks like that's the only line item we could use. And then I would ask, what would we use it for? So we're doing our due diligence.
I'd be happy to make a suggestion. So my suggestion is threefold. First to clarify why the difference in forecasted sales tax is so high, in reducing it 6% and higher 6%. I would like to see more information there. For the funding of the homeless, we could easily add 115,000 to it, but also the difference between the Durango Library public estimated 2023 expense, which is very different from what the city asked. So it's either 3.3 million or 3 million or 3.226 million. That's 226,000 extra. So that's the second one. And I would like to have more understanding of the Durango Senior Services, which I fully support. But so the allocation, you asked earlier, the allocation, if we in general are in support of this structure, I am in support of the structure, but I need more information to come up with, do I really agree with the numbers that you showed?
Can I ask, Mr. Morgan, this is a study session, so we can't make decisions here, correct? How would we go about supporting or not supporting, or we don't support, or giving direction, or like, how do we say and do? How do I disagree with Counselor Bosman's or challenge what he's saying or whatnot?
And I apologize to the county commissioners because we're kind of using a new language in the city where we're very, very careful about what we talk about in study sessions when we don't have an official vote on the agenda. So we try to stay away from proposals or agreements or commitments at these meetings. So if you can certainly ask for a suggestion, or the suggestion can then be a directive or something that you can ask for more information about from your administrative sides. But we really try to avoid anything that is a veiled vote or a commitment of any type at a study session, because that then puts us at risk for the public coming in and saying that decision was made to their exclusion. Even though this is being televised and broadcast, they don't get to participate in study sessions.
Go ahead, Commissioner Salka.
Madam Mayor and Madam Chair, for us would be giving direction to our managers to then when it's time for budget time, this is where we're going to have a public process. So the public will be able to engage on these numbers and all of our budget line items. My direction or suggestion would be with the county commissioners and city council is to keep this as is. And then when it comes down time to the May time period, let's talk about using this additional 115 or any other funds, depending on what the budget comes forward as, or hopefully Adam is wrong and we're getting a ton of sales tax extra. And then we can actually go from May on to say, all right, this is what we can put it to homeless initiatives or library.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I just want to make a point. I think in the past, I hear that you're in a culture shift here, so that makes sense to me. But just in the past, we do need to, when we come together as bodies and say we agree in principle to this, I want to not, we should hold ourselves to that. Now, whether it takes a formal vote or, which it will on our budgets, but I don't want this to be 2 hours where we just kind of talked at the 3,000 foot level and never really got anywhere, because I think historically we've always come together and decided on the joint, made recommendations to our bodies. So does that fit? And if we need to we have our attorney in the room too, so maybe we can just jive. I don't want to get back to the county offices and realize we didn't get to where we needed to get for our continuing budget calendar or yours. So are we good?
So far, so good. I feel like, believe it or not, this has actually been a good meeting for us. We've had different ones. No, this is fine. I think as long as Adam and I walk out of here today and understand that the elected bodies, give us direction to proceed with the numbers that you've seen today, or if you have recommended changes or would like us to look, elsewhere or change some of these numbers to something else, we can certainly go back and do that, and then we'll provide those updated numbers to you. And Commissioner Salka is exactly right. This is the study session. This is where we get direction. The formal adoption of the budget will happen in public hearing. Like we have our hearing a week from tomorrow on October 10th. Public hearing, and then there will be formal adoption in December. Both of those opportunities, the public is afforded to comment on the refined numbers. So as long as we walk out of here today with, conceptually, we see the numbers, we can operate within that. Go ahead and refine those and get them back to us before next week. That's normally what we do here. I'm just trying to think of if there's a good example, like maybe the 150,000 for the senior center capital. If the elected bodies say, wait a minute, no, we don't think that's a good use of joint sales tax funds. We would rather see that money applied somewhere else within this budget. Let us know today, and we will take that out, and then we'll go back to our general fund to look to find those dollars or whatever. That's just an example. I hope you don't do that. Sorry, Vicky, I had to have an example. So
I think like Commissioner Salka and Mayor Pro Tem Yusa said, with what we've done in the past with the overages and applying them in the future, I would feel really irresponsible putting more money in another line item where we don't have a project or an ask from someone right now. I'm not saying it's not an important area, because clearly it has been important. I think the senior center services with the increase in seniors that we're seeing is super important to make sure that we're supporting and funding, and then the library as always. So yes, that's all I'll add.
Madam Mayor, I would be very comfortable with our next, county city meeting that we keep running these numbers and we see exactly where we're at, because I agree with Councilman to be able to put that towards a lot of very important services here. So, I mean, I am fair game, but I am one where, again, I follow my financial officer here, and that is we need some rainy day money just in case for right now.
Great. I appreciate all the comments. Other comments?
And the last one is the library. Since there's a difference between the library in your numbers and what was city asked, I would like to see if there's support or direction or suggestion to increase library services. And I know it's tricky because it can be used against the argument for a library district, but I think our community has shown that they want extended services. And we don't have to do everything at once, but now we have a time to say, okay, we have the joint sales tax and we have the amount that is not used from last year, which hopefully we can clarify. But we can almost put $200,000 towards extending services at the library. And that would be something that we can properly budget for and execute. So it's not a vague question, it's something very specific.
And just to clarify, I think the difference between the 3094 and the 3226 is 132,000. Huh?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Question would be for Luke is that if we just, as is, give direction as it sets right now today, how quick would it be if we have additional funds to be able to have you to expand services at the library?
So if we started the hiring process literally today, it could be anywhere from a 3 to 6 month process based on my last year and 2 months of being here, what the hiring has gone like. And so that's, taking into the best case scenario that while we're doing that hiring, we're also coming up with everything we need to extend the services beyond that, beyond just the hiring and training, which basically our existing staff would have to do work those additional hours, and the people hired would have to backfill the hours those people would be working. And all that would have to be assuming that those staff that were hired for expecting certain hours would be able to change those hours. So if we had the funds and we had city council direction and it was budgeted that we would have that additional funds for next year for sure, then that would still be a 3 to 6 month process.
And before we go down that route, we need to see how much it's going to cost annually because the city's going to have to cover the overage in our budget and in our next budget because it's going to be more than $200,000 for you to have
100%.
extended hours.
So this is based on back of the envelope math. I remember from ages ago, we've seen really different estimates based on this. I'd have to pull up the numbers from Grant Gage's, financial analysis he did, looking at the possibility of a district or other funding models to extend services. But yes, it was above 200,000.
Madam Mayor,
Luke, oh,
just to clarify, so my brain is doing this circular logic thing. Like to do that though, wouldn't you be in the same boat you said you were already in, where to extend them without knowing what your 2025 budget would be? That would be tricky.
I would consider it I'm not a fiscal analysis, but I would consider it irresponsible as a director to hire staff at this moment
Right.
when we're looking at recessionary spending. But like I said, I serve at the pleasure of council and county commission. If that is the direction, we would do whatever we could to find a way to make it work, or we would run all the numbers and come back and say, we need to have this decision looked at again, because that is not my call to make. But yeah, I don't see a way to make that work.
Yeah. And you don't serve at our discretion. We don't
Yeah.
you serve
It
at the
is-
city's discretion.
With the funding.
Yeah, with the
How the
joint
funding
use
is
sales
allocated, joint
tax.
sales tax.
Right. Yep.
I don't decide that.
Yeah, exactly.
Luke, do you?
Can I see if Devin wanted to say something?
Sure. The only piece that I wanted to add, because our council has not had our budget retreat yet. It's next week. But I did want to add that what the city has proposed in the library budget is $81,381 over the joint sales tax amount once we factor out those revenues. So I just wanted to share that point of clarification with this group.
How much
Luke-
was that overage again?
$81,381.
And we're making that budget recommendation over or budget assumption over for what reason?
So we worked with Luke and did some value engineering to figure out where we could come into those numbers, because we do communicate with Adam to understand what they're forecasting for that joint sales tax. And so we kind of get that number and then back into it. So, council obviously has a couple different options there. And, one is we look to make further reductions in reconciliation. Two is that the city would fund it at the 81,381 over, or, we look to see where we come in at the mid-year, either with the joint sales tax or just with expenditures in general, and then manage the budget from there.
So
So,
we are planning on paying for that out of our general fund
correct.
already
Yes.
with no staff increase.
Correct.
Okay.
So my next
that's
question was with that
enlightening.
$81,000, are you still figuring out where to trim the fat? Are you looking at reducing services? Because you're 230,000 less than you were last year.
We will not reduce services.
Okay.
We will
Um,
not reduce services, barring catastrophe.
Sure.
We will find ways to make it work. And so I do believe a portion of that could be, most likely, we could look at some things that are maintenance related, which are some of the greatest increases, and look at that as like, let's push that to mid-year where we can. I've already talked to my head of facilities, Steve Scales, and he says some of that's possible. But regardless, I do believe 80,000 is not a big enough delta when it comes to our overall model of, up to $3 million that it's going to ever be noticed by the public. That's my goal.
The 80,000?
Yes, the 80,000.
Okay.
That what I'm saying, because he asked if there would be a reduction in services based on that. I can't see that with the difference mostly being flat from last year's budget, even though we have some, of course, we're going to have more costs. We're very fortunate that libraries get a Friends of the Library, much unlike other city departments, that allows for spending that was not anticipated. And, that's kind of revenues that can happen during the year for things that were not budgeted for. And so we're confident that we can meet and exceed our level of service with people, coming through has only continued to go up and up through over 23, over 22. That we'll be able to meet them where they are and provide the same level of excellent service, even at a reduced rate. We can't do that for several years in a row. Attrition will happen, but we can certainly do that in 2024.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I would just still stick to what I've been saying, is that we stay with these numbers. And then this is a discussion that you don't need all that total budget for the library on day one. So this is something that we can talk about. I'm making up months, May, June, July, whenever, and we can
Appreciate it
this.
very much.
I also would like to
Yeah.
say that to in the vein of what Mr. Morgan said earlier, that we don't get too off topic, but I think we do need to circle back on the concept of a library district. I know there's not uniform opinion in this room among all the counselors, and we have 2 new counselors. I don't know where you stand on it, but we have really good briefings. I lose track of time sometime. That was last year, right? In 2022. And good projections. And I think there was an expansion of services under some of those scenarios. Not to rehash all that. I promise I won't go there, but just to say that might be another one that we circle back on and say, okay, where are we at with that? What is happening with that with the 2 elected officials that serve on the library advisory board? And I believe last time there was going to be sort of a citizen group that started thinking about that, because we've said before that would free up in this year's budget. If a library district were to pass, we would have 3 million to figure out other joint projects. And, there's the public is going to ask us hard questions about where would that 3 million go, or whatever the number would be, but which we already knew, but maybe something to circle back on.
It's not, we get 3 million, our taxpayers will be ending up paying $3 million more through another mill levy. So it's not a tit for tat. We get that money
Depending-
available, but if a district passes, someone's going to pay for that district. So it's not
Right.
for free.
Yeah, but I still have 3/4 of La Plata County that's paying a library tax and coming here and paying for a library. And it's just, I already have 3/4 of the county right now already doing that.
So certainly back to the budget, but it's a very good point. I just want to make sure I understand all of this absolutely correctly, which is we have not had our budget retreat yet. Like you were saying, Devin, that's next week. But so from what I understand, in order to maintain, because we've had a lot of talk here about intentionally not expanding services, but I want to be very clear for the public record that for us as a city, we are maintaining services right now, maintaining what we currently have, and we're spending an extra $81,000 to do that. So we're not putting any money anywhere on the side. We're not saving it in any fund balance, from what I understand. Is that correct, Luke and Devin? Am I getting that correctly? Okay. I just want to be very, very clear about that. This is to maintain services as we currently have them today. There's no, right now, going forward, we aren't saving money for the future. We're just trying to maintain. So I just want to be real clear with that for council, because I think that's an important conversation to be had.
But is that clear? Because we left $250,000 or $270,000 on the table last year and not extending services.
I'm talking about this right
upcoming-
now,
Okay.
going forward for next year. We are maintaining services. Is that correct, Devin, from what I understand?
Yeah, so that is correct. And Luke obviously has the better details about what's in his proposal. But I would just say as well too, that, we work with the county to do the billing. And so it's not that we're billing based off of budget, it's billing based off of actuals. And so there's no opportunity or situation where that would end up in the city's fund balance, for example. It's
Right.
based on what actually happens
Thank
at the
you.
library.
And then just one further step of clarification again for the public record. Last year, the conscientious decision not to bring on additional staff was made based on the fact that there was concerns about where the economy was headed. And so it was a conservative approach. I'm one counselor. I'm conservative as well. So I appreciate that we did that in the end. We always then get to decide what to do with those if the monies aren't spent, how to expend those together. But anyway, I just wanted to make those points real clear for the record. Any other thoughts from our council team? Okay. Great. And then Marcia, to follow up on your point that you brought up a new point, and you didn't want to get into details, but I did want to think about the fact that going forward in our meetings together, our joint meetings, it seems like it would be beneficial to add an item to our agendas on future new business. Because I don't know how else as combined groups we are able to do that.
I would concur because Mr. Morgan has a really good point. We never want to get off of what the published agenda said, but I think that would be a great idea.
We have a lot of important work to do together. And so it'd be nice to be able to touch on some of that during our meetings, work sessions.
I just realized, Madam Mayor, have you been approached about the Hermosa to Durango and making a request? So I have been actually remiss in not putting this in our discussion earlier. I think we are interested in it for sure. It came late in our process, frankly, for our community benefit grants that we do, public benefit grants. I don't know, that is a trail that would do all kinds of things, but it would go from Hermosa, and I'm not sure where they know exactly the ending point would be in Durango, but there's a pretty good coalition behind it, and they have asked us to fund 220,000, which I think we're not interested in funding the whole thing. And when we met with them, it was about like 6 weeks ago, we said we would bring it up at the joint use sales tax. And I have been remiss in not bringing it up earlier, but I just wondered what your thoughts were. And I believe there was a meeting. Do we know when that meeting happened? There's going to be a meeting with Durango Trails, and Kevin Hall from our staff is going to go, and they have a lot of specifics to do. They're kind of at the visionary phase, and will you give us money for planning, but what the outcomes would be and all of that. But if we're going to fund it out of the joint use sales tax, we need to have a discussion probably sooner rather than later.
I think that they did approach us. You want to go ahead?
I was going to say, was the 220, were they asking out of the joint sales tax, or is that this county's contribution?
They were asking the county to fund that. And I remember Commissioner Salk and I specifically saying, well, this would be a great joint use sales tax. Really, it should be a city county thing because it's connecting key urbanizing area in the county with, the city. And that's as far as we got it. Chuck, I don't know if you want to add to anything of our budgeting.
No, I think your recollection is largely accurate. I think it was 250. I think it was a cool $250,000. And the ask came to the county. We don't have that in the general fund, and we don't do parks and rec in the county. And so the conversation quickly turned to, could that be a potential project that could be agreed upon and funded out of the joint sales tax? So we did commit to bringing it up here. And so I'm glad you remembered, because I forgot.
One idea might be with the transfer, and by the way, that title based on the email we got, we don't do it without our joint direction. One idea would be is to schedule a discussion. I want to see where they're at in their planning, and wait until our next meeting, because that would be the perfect place to say, because I have never been a proponent of funding the entire thing, because I think they can fundraise and or get planning money through green infrastructure dollars. And goodness knows this is a time to be doing green infrastructure, but maybe we could circle back on that. Say, okay, if they have a live wire planning grant going, maybe, or something, I don't know.
I think circling back, I'd be interested to see where it connects because that's super important for connectivity in order. I mean, we've spent a ton of money on that Animas River Trail. And if it can be connected to that, then, you know, it's definitely a benefit to the city and bringing, you know, the commuters in that way. Yeah, where they're at in the planning process, where the start and the end is, where they're getting their funding from, how much the total project's going to cost, like lots of questions. Obviously.
They do have some drawings and I can't tell you exactly. I know at least it ended by the train tracks north of Durango.
The right of ways and all that. So Durango Trails is involved, which gives me a lot of comfort because nobody knows trails better than them. So maybe we could let them know that we'll circle back once we know more where they're at.
Yeah,
Does it
more,
work?
once I get a little bit more information, you
Mhm.
know, on their, but certainly connectivity
Yeah.
into
yeah.
and out of the city, extremely important. And we, you know, that sounds like something I'd love to hear more about.
I agree too. I think it's a great opportunity. I'm glad you bring it forward and I'm glad that they reached out to you. Should we anticipate already a certain line item in the budget? To move things forward a little bit.
When's our
I'd like to
next
see a
meeting?
budget from them.
Yeah.
I think there's so
Yeah.
much, I mean, I think I'd like to maybe get a little more information from them, more than
Mhm.
just a pipe dream of making this happen, to get some actionable things that we could actually contribute towards. So I'd hesitate to, since this is such a tight fund as it is, and we're already kind of showing where this attrition is going to come out of, that we have to kind of be careful about what else we're going to commit to.
I agree. And I think Commissioner Church knows more about this than I do, but there apparently is a grant, a planning grant they can apply for in March of 24. And so again, maybe our contribution is somewhat of a match versus funding $250,000. So
I
Commissioner
think-
Church.
Yes, I think connection to the Durango Trail System is key because of the increase in e-bike ridership. And we're seeing people riding at night, especially in the, fall, winter, spring, when the days are short. You're going along a county road or a city street, there's a little flashing pinpoint of light and you're on it before you know what's happening. So I think it relates back to safety and health, protection of both of our communities, city and county commuters, and encourages a very efficient way of travel.
It would be wonderful. I mean, it'd be wonderful. I mean, if you see communities that are connected by
Oh,
really
yeah.
long trails along the side of the highway and they go for miles and miles and miles. We have all talked about that for a very long time. But I think that they need to get, the first step is figuring out what does the planning involved? How much is it? We need more information on that. And before we go further, but I'm extremely intrigued and interested. So love to hear more when they're ready. Maybe, like you said, next meeting. I don't know. Okay. Any other items regarding the budget? You guys? Gilda? So with that, then we're not giving direction here as a city. But I think we all had good discussion and general ideas and thoughts. So I think with that, then I guess maybe we conclude this meeting. Our next meeting is when? Do you know, Chuck?
It's January. I'm not sure if it's on the calendars yet, but it will be in January. That's historically when we've done it.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mayor and
bye.
everyone.
Thank-
Appreciate it.
Thanks, commissioners.